Tonight, we have an exclusive report raising significant concerns about activities of officers working within the Irish Prison Service. Brian Maher, a serving officer, went to fight in Ukraine 3 years ago. However, when the Irish Prison Service saw him speaking from a hospital bed in Ukraine on this programme, a few weeks later, he was fired. He disputed that decision because he had paid other officers cash to cover his shifts, saying it's a common practice in the prison service. And recently, the WRC concluded he was right. So how widespread is the practice and why are there big concerns about it? Una Smith has been investigating.
This is a story about a prison officer who went to fight in Ukraine, paying other officers to cover his shifts.
It's not like I invented this system. This system is there.
What's going on in the Irish Prison Service, it's shift for cash. It's like a parallel universe.
Everyone in the prison service knows that it's widespread.
It leads to officers doing too many hours for cash.
If you have people who are overworked, exhausted, not up to the job, then it puts everybody at risk.
Tonight, exclusively on Primetime, prison officer Brian Maher blows the whistle on cash deals for shifts within the prison service. It's a system he hoped to rely on when he went to fight in Ukraine. He tells us how the cash system is leading some officers to work very long, unsafe hours in our overcrowded, volatile prisons, and some others to rarely appear at all. Brian Maher is a prison officer and ex-member of the Defence Forces. 3 years ago, he went to fight in Ukraine. Since he returned, he's been involved in a different battle, trying to get his job back after he was fired by the prison service for leaving his post without notice. He says he went out of fear for his young daughter.
She's from a town that's probably around 25 kilometres away from the Ukrainian border. She was actually over there at the time. Her grandmother is Ukrainian. There's no army in the world that's going to be between me and my daughter. President Zelensky announced the formation of the International Legion, and I see my chance there. Maybe I could go help with training people. Wasn't necessarily to fight.
To cover his shifts while gone, Brian took some leave and left cash with a friend to pay other prison officers for his shifts, relying on a shift swap system.
So basically, I had gotten a few people before I had actually left. I'd organised the swapping system with them. I paid them their cash, and they had actually covered my shift while I was away.
He says he left almost €2,000 with a friend to cover his shifts for roughly a month.
It's not like I invented this system. This system is there. I've seen it work. So I didn't see what's the difference between me using it or them using it.
Not long after making arrangements in June 2022, Brian was on his way to Ukraine, flying first to Poland.
And I got a taxi down to the border and walked across. I waited there for a number of hours until someone from the Legion came. They thanked me for coming. Then I was again ferried on to a Ukrainian military base where I was interviewed.
Within weeks, Brian found himself on the front line.
We were on the ground, no idea where we were, with no communications with anybody. Ukraine it's a massive country, and what was in the forest, it was teeming with soldiers and armour. We were moving into this one village, up along the ditch line, and then explosions, gunfire, then erupted. I got hit.
Brian was taken to a field hospital, from where he spoke to Primetime.
It was a bouncing Betty mine. It can be activated and it springs into the air and it explodes. And for a split second, I was like, I'm not hurt. And then as I took a few steps, oh, I am hurt. Liquid fluid was filling up my lungs because I was struggling to breathe. It was like I was slowly drowning. And it just got so bad that I said, right, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna at least die comfortable. So I just started to take my PPE off me. Do you know, I regret that I got hit so quick in the offensive. I wanted to do more, and I couldn't, so.
According to the prison service, it was this interview on Primetime, broadcast 3 years ago, which alerted them to the fact that Brian was in Ukraine.
I know if Ireland was invaded, I would want, Europeans and foreign men to come and help us fight. So that's all I did. I'm very glad I came here.
At this point, Brian had been gone from work for over 3 months. Now the Irish Prison Service, on seeing the broadcast, took decisive action, writing to dismiss him. Brian says he was initially too unwell to do anything about it.
Like, I'm trying to fight for my life. I'm trying to fight for my arms. Like, my fingers were fairly mashed at the time as well. So I was in and out of operations.
After Brian recovered somewhat, he was evacuated home. Despite the relief of seeing his daughter again, who was then back in Ireland, Brian faced into trying to get his job back and challenged his sacking at the Workplace Relations Commission. 2 months ago, the adjudicator found that he had been unfairly dismissed. The adjudicator accepted that the cash-based, unofficial swapping system which Brian had used to cover his shifts, in fact, does exist.
The prison service has this unofficial parallel universe. It's shift for cash. And one officer is paying cash to another officer for doing that person's shift.
You're talking about people doing their own hours and then somebody else's hours. You're talking about people who might be overworked, exhausted.
The WRC adjudicator noted that the fact that Brian's absence from his shifts in Mountjoy wasn't noticed for nearly a month was indicative of a system that has a high degree of self-regulation and swapping. The adjudicator also noted the prison service had stated in evidence about the cash system that, if it existed and operated, would be fraudulent.
So it was the prison service who said that if such a system was operating, it would be fraudulent. And the adjudicator then concluded in favour of the person who had gone to the Ukraine. So in other words, the adjudicator did not believe the Irish Prison Service.
There's a reason why we have robust employment legislation in place, to stop people from burning out, from overworking. You need people at the top of their game, really, while they're in a prison environment. It is a very volatile situation sometimes. You need to be alert at all times. You have people in your care.
The Irish Prison Service told Primetime that it's appealing the WRC decision as it disputes the facts of Brian Maher's case. It says it rejects any suggestion that unlawful, fraudulent or unethical practices are tolerated within the service. It also said that it had appointed an independent investigator in relation to the exchange of duty system last year, following an unrelated protected disclosure, and that the investigation did not substantiate the allegations. Primetime spoke to several former senior members of the prison service, including governors, who described the cash payment system as being widespread in Irish prisons. We also saw evidence of how shifts are traded on social media sites. When prison officers plan to go off work unofficially, they go on messaging apps such as WhatsApp or Telegram, where shifts are traded for cash. For example,
this Thursday, the 30th, 8 till 8, €170. Saturday 1st for cash. Sunday 2nd February for sale. Saturday 1st of February, 11 annualised hours for sale, €200.
Once a cash deal is agreed between officers, official paperwork is submitted indicating an exchange or direct swapping of shifts. The paperwork incorrectly states that the officer taking time off will work a shift in return, but in reality, the officer pays for it and doesn't do a shift back. Brian says that the prison's computerised clock-in systems records show that shifts are not actually exchanged.
The electronic system would show that I did not reciprocate that day for them because I would not have clocked in for them.
One assistant chief officer, now retired, spoke to us on condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. He told Primetime how he had authorised fake swaps on official paperwork, known as exchange of duty forms. He inputted the details into the prison's computerised time and attendance system called Clockwise.
during my time, I would have signed off on thousands of exchange of duty forms and inputted that information into the Clockwise system. So I could see at first hand that at least half of these were never being reciprocated, the exchanges. When you see an officer that doesn't work 15 of his days and he has other officers working for him, you just presume that he's paying those other officers to carry out his duties.
So within the prison service, there are records that would reveal the racket that is going on. If you try to reconcile payroll and reconcile the time and attendance, it will immediately show up that there are significant discrepancies, I would have thought. It's completely wrong and unacceptable.
Yet, this former Assistant Chief Officer says that cash-based shift swaps are routine, common knowledge and have been going on a long time.
It's extremely normal. I would probably put it down as maybe 50-50. Some officers, not all officers do it. Everyone in the prison service knows that it's widespread. There would be notifications sent to governors and prisons from on maybe 2 occasions that I can think of where they said crack down a little bit on this system. It has been going on for many, many years.
In a Dáil report almost 30 years ago, the former Minister for Justice confirmed that officers in Limerick Prison had misused the official exchange of duty system.
In this instance, where these people were found to be abusing it, I gather what has been happening was that they were paying the person who was doing their roster, but they continued to be paid as a prison officer.
Another former chief officer told us he saw cash deals becoming widespread when, in 2005, to cut overtime, the prison service made additional hours mandatory for all officers.
Some of them were forced to do 360 hours a year extra. They used to farm that out. They used to pay cash for that, so we had cash merchants, as we call them, and they would do any hours. There was a book outside Detail Office that actually had cash deals on the front of it.
The Irish Prison Service told us that it does not recognise or condone any cash-based arrangements. In a statement, it said that it's undertaking annual reviews of the exchange of duty policy, focused on identifying measures to support improved compliance and accountability, and that new measures recently introduced have improved compliance, resulting in 24 officers being removed from the exchange of duty privilege, none relating to cash payments. It also said that it has completed a procurement process to install a system which will deliver enhanced monitoring of the exchange of duty process by the end of next year. It said this new system will remove the paper-based process currently in place and render it impossible to avail of an exchange of duty without reciprocation. Senior officers told us that as cash for work arrangements became endemic in prisons, all kinds of shifts and extra hours were traded, despite its impact on prison routines, such as prisoners getting to the gym or workshops where the officer filling in doesn't have the right qualification.
If a gym officer is scheduled to work that day, but they have somebody working for them, that gym can't open because the person isn't covered.
If there's anyone qualified for the workshops, we just close them. So it does have an impact on the prisoners. You're taking away a lot of their out-of-cell time. The rest of the time, they're behind the cell door.
Those are all the outlets that people have. So if you take any of that away, then tensions can heighten further. There are people 3, 4 to a cell. They're sharing a cell the size of a car park space, with a toilet that they have to use in front of each other. There's very little privacy. So tensions are heightened anyway.
Senior officers who spoke to Primetime also spoke about another serious impact of the cash system. They say a minority of officers flagrantly abuse the system, routinely paying others for their shifts and rarely showing up for work at all.
I've then met other people that they appeared just one day, and I had been in a couple of years at that stage, and I said to them, "Oh, you're new, are you?" And they were like, "No, I'm in this job X amount of years."
I've known of some prison officers who had business on the outside where they pretty much never came into the prison. It wouldn't be uncommon for an officer in the last 10 years never had to have done one of his, not 1 hour of his annualised hours, because he'd have a number of people who he knows will work for cash.
Those who often miss their shifts can also miss important skills refresher training, which can impact security.
Well, it means that if, for example, there's a violent situation in the prison, technically you can't put them into this situation because they're not qualified to enter a volatile situation. In some cases where I would like to have put in 24 officers into a situation, I might only have 15 that I can use.
And while the officers who double job on the outside risk prison security, they still get the benefits of working full-time in prison, such as their pensions.
The person who doesn't do the work is treated on the books of the prison service as if they were doing the work, and they therefore earn pension entitlements on that. On the other hand, the person who got the cash and is doing the work is getting no pension entitlements for that work. And that person could come along later and say to the prison service, you know, you have this system, you all know about it, everybody knows about it, and I have been deprived of my rights.
Senior officers who spoke to Primetime said that while the majority of prison officers do a very good job in difficult circumstances, the most worrying impact of the cash deal system is that it leads some to do very long stints of continuous days.
And they would be 8 hours, 12 hours shifts every day. I think my record, I think I've done 30-something days straight.
But if you have somebody that's working silly hours, crazy hours, of course they would get burnt out. It wouldn't have been uncommon for officers to literally fall asleep on their shift because the officer was overworked and he was tired.
Prison reform advocates say that in our severely overcrowded prisons, this is alarming.
You have people there who are literally falling asleep at the wheel. So that is really concerning. We've seen from the Irish Prison Service's own statistics for last year, we saw an increase in the number of prisoner-on-prisoner assaults, but a decrease in the number of physical interventions by prison officers.
One former chief officer told us how some of the officers doing excessive shifts through cash deals became unfit for work.
They were either burnt out, intoxicated, sometimes both, because they're working, I suppose, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And then doing that, they need a release. They used to go to the pub at lunchtime, then they would either come back late or come back unfit for work.
According to this chief officer, in one prison, a small minority of officers who burnt out from overwork became cocaine users. In time, some became a different kind of security risk.
If you're working all those hours and you're taking cocaine to keep ticking over, well then your dealer now has you where he wants you.
This former chief officer, retired in recent years, agreed to be interviewed on condition of anonymity. He explained why people don't speak out about the cash system when in the prison service.
There's no basic grade officer going to blow the system on cash deals, because if they did and it was found out, they'd be lynched. They could forget about ever working in the system. They could forget about ever even living in the area.
The Irish Prison Service says it has highly trained staff operating in challenging environments, and that claims linking exchange of duty participation to addiction, burnout or contraband smuggling are unsubstantiated. Our investigations suggest that the cash payment system is leading to many tangled security, welfare and financial issues in our prisons, pointing to a need to overhaul oversight of the prison service.
They say that there was no problems with the internal controls in 2024, which was the annual report that I looked at. And my own reaction to those statements are, they're not true. This is a division of the Department of Justice. It's not a standalone state body. The Department of Justice's own internal audit function oversees it. There's questions to answer about the effectiveness of that oversight.
Professor Brennan believes that other bodies now need to investigate.
This is an unofficial cash exchange process, and I would have thought the Revenue should take an interest in this. The Controller and Auditor General should conduct an investigation of this.
In a statement, the Irish Prison Service says it takes its governance responsibilities very seriously and that its statements in its annual report for 2024 regarding governance, oversight and audit are accurate. In a statement, the Department of Justice said these allegations appear to refer to illegal arrangements without the knowledge or acquiescence of this department or the Director General of the Irish Prison Service. The department takes any allegations of wrongdoing extremely seriously and will ensure that they are fully investigated. A new law to make the prison service independently governed and accountable like An Garda Síochána has been promised for decades, yet it still has not happened. The shifts for cash system in our prisons highlights an urgent need for change.
Prisons are all about security, and if you don't have prison officers in the right place, the right times, alert and efficient and able to do their job, then that absolutely impacts on the security of the prison.
So, at the best of times, this shift swapping system would be concerning, but at the worst of times, like we are now, with record levels of overcrowding, it's even more concerning.
It's a complete racket. I'm astonished at the pervasiveness of it, that so many people are doing this. So I was quite taken aback that a state body would be involved in something like this.
I've had family members threatened and they've gotten warnings that I should pull back from this. It was explained to me that the prison service would shut down if this system did not exist. So I'm just getting my truth out there. They've kind of forced me into this position and this is why I'm here.